culture. We had great players. And I was able to be a head coach, but also be in the defensive meeting room with the coaches every day. The defensive unit meeting was an integral part of the defensive staff while still being able to be a very successful head coach.
No, you weren't. You weren't a successful head coach. What are you talking about?
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you state?
That's fake news. You weren't like, okay, so I would think for 11 million plus, I could at least say my last employer's name.
Next year, COVID hits, and combining that with all the
it was COVID's fault. You know, college football Heisman Trophy winner, COVID, according to Geoff Collins. And this is what you're going to find out for any North Carolina fans that watches this. He's going to absolutely body your defense and make them worse than when he took them over, and then he's going to blame something that isn't him. You know, what was the pandemic something that only happened in Atlanta? Was the pandemic just isolated to the city of Atlanta? Or was that a global thing?
My attention got away from the defense, and
so now he wasn't involved in the defense. So at first, yep, it started off, I was heavily involved with the defense, and then the pandemic hit, and it's isolated to Atlanta somewhere, and I wasn't so involved with the defense. Well, let me ask you something. Then why was it the minute you left, Andrew Thacker was an infinitely better DC? Why was it when you left, game one, we go on the road, 3 touchdown underdogs and get a win, and the only difference is that you're not there? Why can't someone ask him about that? What's going on, everyone? I got the sunglasses on tonight because it's not just WreckTalk talking to you. It's much more than that. It's Gangster Wreck talking tonight. Now, I'm all for having a good bit of fun. As I said, this was posted in the Discord, and I guess Geoff said some silly things, which is a very Geoff Collins thing to do. But I look, first of all, comments are turned off. What's the point of doing YouTube unless you're doing like YouTube Kids? That'd be like the only way I could understand not turning comments on. What's the point of doing YouTube if your audience can't react to the content you put out? Like, why would anyone engage with this? They can't engage with it. All they can do is watch it and keep their mouth shut. Yeah, first thing that'll come to mind is, he has an absolutely doofus haircut. I mean, that's a given. So I'm like, okay, let me make sure this isn't a Collins specific thing, because a lot of really silly things are specific to Collins. And then I see this. I go just look at their channel. They don't do comments for any video. All right, so it says, this is Inside Carolina where he did this interview. Inside of a bubble, which is where he likes to exist. Inside Carolina is the independent voice of UNC sports since 1994 and is now a network partner with 247 and CPS Sports Digital. These are hot shots, guys. The Inside Carolina staff is composed of experienced professional reporters and analysts whose job is to provide readers with objective, independent coverage of Tar Heel sports and recruiting. We'll see how independent and objective the questions they ask are. Because I did listen to some of it while I was riding to pick up my daughter. And one of the questions was, I've listened to like maybe 5 minutes of it as I'm skipping through. One of the questions was, how did Geoff Collins become Geoff Collins? So, ooh, that's a tough one. You really stumped him with that one. The one thing Geoff Collins loves talking about the most is Geoff Collins. All right. Now, here's where we've got problems, guys. It says, please be aware. If you still IC videos or photos, I think that's a typo, by the way. I don't know what IC is. I think they meant to put IP, but I could be wrong for intellectual property. but they're basically threatening the people that do watch their stuff or other content creators like me. This is a threat. We will file a YouTube copyright violation and we will not remove strikes. So we're going to find out tonight. I thought we would do this live just because I saw it. We'll put this to the test and see if they copyright strike me. They don't know what they're saying. What you're doing is fine. Yeah, I know what I'm doing is fine. Fair use doctrine does not cover you taking our material and adding an overlay or a note that you don't own the copyright. First of all, that sentence is a disaster. These people call themselves professionals. They're not even professionals as it pertains to the English language, which is directly responsible for their profession, being able to write. So what they're saying is, what they're trying to say is if someone does what I'm about to do, they're going to copyright strike them. Let me be clear. And I'm dead serious. It's not a character. This really pissed me off. If they want to copyright strike me, I'll appeal it. And if we need to pursue litigation, we'll pursue litigation because this is nonsense. I mean, geez, you know, let's say you're a North Carolina fan and you're like, oh, let's go see what this is about. The first thing you see is a threat. Come on now. All right. Let's just get right into it. Let's just get right into this. Why can't I hear it, though? Oh, I know why I can't hear it.
Inside Carolina's next level, where Greg Barnes and myself get together, talk about things a little bit deeper than your normal game.
First thing I noticed, this guy has the thickest eyebrows. Looks like two caterpillars for eyebrows here. It almost looks like he's just taken some of Geoff's pubic hair and put it on for eyebrows. But yeah, these are definitely the looks of two guys that would probably try and copyright strike you and abuse the YouTube copyright system. We're going to find out tonight.
Game reports and all that. We've joined by a special guest, defensive coordinator for North Carolina, Geoff Collins. How you doing, Coach Collins?
Doing great. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, Greg and I wanted to get you on, obviously one of the newer members of the staff for Mack Brown, and sort of discuss what makes Geoff Collins and how Geoff Collins will affect this North Carolina team down the road.
We want to discuss what makes Geoff Collins. This guy calls himself a professional. He doesn't even know. They can't write. We've established that, and he doesn't know how to speak. Did Greg beat up such a bunch of sissy weirdos? Yeah, this guy, I don't know about this. Dude. By the way, you know Geoff Collins has blocked me on Twitter now because he's soft. I mean, just look at that haircut.
I got a first question for you.
Okay.
All right, first one. Let's hear it.
And we'll have softballs, but we'll have tough ones. This is somewhere in the middle.
All right. Well, I'm waiting with bated breath for a tough question to Geoff Collins. He blocked me too. Yeah, he blocks everyone. In fact, guys, you might be blocked by Geoff Collins just for being a Georgia Tech fan. You might have never even interacted with Geoff Collins on Twitter. No lie, you might be blocked by him. I'm pretty sure he might even have a program that blocks people. This is what he spends his time doing instead of coaching a serviceable football team.
Okay.
At what point did you become...
He blocked you and you're a Georgia fan. Yeah, I mean, this guy, I'm just going to be honest with you, he's a piece of shit is what he is. I'll just call it how I see it.
Geoff Collins that we see today.
All right, let me back up.
Did you become Geoff somewhere in the middle?
Okay.
At what point did you become Geoff Collins that we see today?
All right, so he says there's going to be some softballs, there's going to be some hard questions. First question, at what point did you become the person you are? Wow. What a absolute joke. What they should do, instead of being worried about copyright striking someone like me for reacting like this, they should take this down if they respect their profession at all, just based on the first 50 seconds of this.
I'd like to say at birth, but I don't know. Just I had love of college football all my life. And, when I graduated from high school, graduated from college, kind of knew I wanted to make that life's work. And I've been blessed with a wonderful wife that has, afforded me the opportunity and support to be able to have my career go in the way it's gone. And, but I think it's just the whatever people see or think or whatever. I think it's just comes from a genuine place of,
Yes, what I see and hear and think about Geoff Collins does come from a genuine place. Geoff Collins, I said this in the last video and I'll say it again here. Geoff Collins is the answer to the question, what would happen if you let someone who is legitimately retarded coach football? Look at him. Look at him. He knows he's going to do an interview. Obviously, this is planned. He can't even fix his hair to look like he didn't just roll out of bed or get out from under one that another guy's in. I mean, come on, man. I would be pissed if I did an interview, legitimately, and someone showed up with hair like that. So the first question is, how is Geoff Collins? Geoff Collins, I guess from birth. They're not going to ask him any hard questions. I can guarantee you that one. And why do I know that? Because he'll cry and go home.
Just trying to pour into young people and, positively affect.
Oh, other thing about Geoff Collins. He's a petulant man-child. He's someone that get paid over $11 million not to coach at Georgia Tech, which is the best money Georgia Tech's ever spent. The best money Georgia Tech's ever spent is the $11 million to get this buffoon out of our program. He was so bad, the guy that hired him also got fired. I bet you no one who has ever watched my channel has been so bad at their job that the person who hired you got fired just by virtue of hiring you, which is what got him fired.
Respect them and love the game and just love being around it.
Is there anything better than being on the practice field with those guys? Because we've gotten to watch you, and you.
No, because he doesn't actually do practice. Geoff Collins has players, and this is not made up, chase each other with pool noodles and cardboard cutouts of players instead of practice. And then I guess they go get ice cream and play slapdick later. That's what Geoff, so I'm sure he is ecstatic to do that.
You were quite enthusiastic.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. Coach Brown said a couple times that, it looks like I'm having the best day of my life every day that I'm out there at practice. And
that's because you're thanking the great Lord above that someone was dumb enough to take a chance on you.
Games are awesome, but in the meeting rooms, out at practice, when you can really affect, young men's lives and shape their careers and them as people, that means a lot to me too.
All right, so 2 minutes and 11 seconds in, I am now dumber for having listened to that too. Like, thank God I'm as smart as I am to compensate for the lack of IQ points I'm about to receive.
Coach, one of the things that interests me about offensive and defensive football is kind of the give and take over the years.
All right. First of all, this guy's voice is lovely, isn't it? I hate to be discriminatory. I will say this. If you're going to do podcasting or YouTube, where your voice is a radio, it helps to have a palatable voice. This guy's over on anything you would want for presentation in a podcast. He has Bert and Ernie's eyebrows, and he has the voice of a redneck child. So this is going to be tough to get through.
And one side's always trying to one up the other, and there seems to be kind of a rhythmic motion to that. One side has the advantage for a stretch, and then the other side catches up. And When you
So what,
first started,
what stretch are we in right now, you think?
Okay, I know I'm starting and stopping. I don't have a clue what the hell that guy's talking about. Hold on a second.
to one up the given interest.
That means a lot to me too.
Coach, one of the things that interests me about offensive and defensive football is kind of the give and take over the years. And one side's always trying to one up the other, and there seems to be kind of a rhythmic motion to that. You
see how happy he got with rhythmic motion? He's hoping they can do some of that later. Let me go ahead. I'll put the link to this video in the description. I also have polarized glasses on. So one quick way to know if your glasses are polarized is if you put them up to your monitor and rotate them, it will make it not visible to you. Now that's physics, something Geoff Collins doesn't know much about. So let's go ahead. We'll put this in the description of the video. Original video. That way they can't say that I'm trying to claim this as my, I made this.
know, one side has the advantage for a stretch, and then the other side catches up. And
what a great synopsis of football. You know, there's some guys, you know, they're trying to win, and then you're trying to win, and then you're both trying to win. So that's what I like about football. This guy's a 247 reporter or something, or affiliated. Wow. The bar is quite low for 247.
First started.
What stretch are we in right now, you think?
I don't know. We're going to get there.
I don't know. I think I just totally demonstrated I got no idea what the hell I'm talking about. Could you please just take over now?
I'm going to ask you that question. Really, when you got started kind of in the mid-'90s, it was right on the forefront, I guess, of when Rich Rodriguez started doing the spread offense and those types of things. So you've kind of seen a lot of the shift to the spread, and
Right.
you know, it wasn't that long ago that the spread was just one thing, and it's kind of everything now.
What? The spread was just one thing. You know, I don't even think Collins, who I will give him the credit of being a legitimate coordinator, knows what he's talking about. This guy, you're way out of your element, sir.
So I'm curious in the origin of your philosophy, kind of where you got to the mindset of, hey, we're going to attack, we're going to be aggressive, we're going to do multiple looks to try to slow down these offenses.
Okay, first of all, every defensive coordinator gives you multiple looks. The idea that this is somehow a revelation that Collins had tells me this guy knows absolutely nothing about football. Otherwise, every team would just come out and be like, we're just going to show two safeties high, and we'll run a 3-4, two safeties high, not pressed on the corners or something. Or we're just going to run cover 2 the whole game. Has any defensive coordinator ever done that ever? In fact, I'm willing to bet Greg Barnes doesn't even know the difference between cover 2, cover 3, zone. He might know what man is because that's kind of self-evidence. He probably doesn't know what zone blitzing is. Wow.
Where did you get started, and kind of what's your little pathway in terms of becoming the elite defensive coordinator you were when you were?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Come on now. That's
You
fake
are
news.
fake news.
Sir,
Go ahead.
can you stake?
You are fake news.
Sir,
Go ahead.
can you stake?
Fake news. What are you talking about? Are they cupping the balls of this man any firmer? Golly.
We're at Mississippi State and Florida.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate that. I think it started Albright College. I was a Division III defensive coordinator. I think I was 26 years old. Me and Matt Rule, he was my linebackers coach. I was the defense coordinator. We thought we had.
And Matt Rule thinks so much of you, he doesn't want you anywhere near Nebraska. Isn't that interesting? Let me go through the chat here real quick. They're blowing hot air up his ass, 100%. What does that mean? No one knows what Greg Barnes here is talking about for sure. KS says combined 23 IQ points in one podcast. 100%. Bro only watches Pee Wee football, LMAO. Only positive I can say about Collins is that he did recruit good defensive players. Yes, and then ruin their careers by putting them on an awful team that he coached.
Had all the answers. And we were
like recruiting well is useless if you don't win. Who cares? Miami's always recruited pretty well, right? What do they have to show for that? Not as many ACC titles as Tech has in the same time frame. And that's not me poo-pooing on recruiting, but you can't just completely brain fart on one aspect of coaching. You know, yeah, we're recruiting in the top 25, but we're going to absolutely, you know, go 3-9 3 years in a row. Gaming Lord says you can't recruit and not show it. True. Like, I'm sure Texas has always recruited really well, and it hasn't been until they've got Sark in there that they've done well. Florida generally recruits well. Like, a lot of these schools recruit well. Now, that is the gate. That is the gateway to being a nationally competitive program. I'll say that. If you're not recruiting in the top 15, probably not realistic you're going to compete for a national title. But it's not proof positive that you're going to be a successful team either.
We're out there just dialing up some stuff and having a blast with it. So I was 2 years as a Division III defense coordinator, and I would say probably 30 to 40% of the teams in that league were running the wing T. So it started off as a defense coordinator, young guy, defending the wing T. Then I go to Georgia Tech.
All right, we're going to talk about Georgia Tech. Really quick, I am looking at the background and what's in their houses. I'm confident we could engage in a lawsuit if need be if they want to copyright strike me. So that makes me feel better. Let's
off as a defense coordinator, young guy, defending the wing T. Then I go to Georgia Tech with George O'Leary and learn elite defensive schematics from him.
Yeah, he did learn over George. He says he learns it under George O'Leary, but doesn't really have anything positive to say about George O'Leary. If you remember back to past interviews, you know, he's like, man, those George O'Leary practices, man, those were brutal. Well, you know what? You know what those teams had that none of teams that were coached by Geoff Collins have? They won. You know? So, you know what I realized about Geoff, guys? And we just got to come out and say it. I've been following the Boogie 2988 stuff where he lied about a bunch of stuff, and he's on a show called Lolcow Live with Keemstar. Geoff Collins is the Boogie 2988 of college football.
You ready? With me.
Leah something says.
Wait. Let me get down it! I think your mic settings are wrong because we can't hear you. Even that screaming and yelling.
Scam Boogie, make him pay the $3K and mail the play button to Medicare. Leave something. Thank you for your donation.
Thank you, Leah something. We appreciate you.
Geoff Collins is a lolcow. He's 100% a lolcow. And I'm milking him for every bit of content from my channel that he's worth. Because he owes me that. He owes me at least that.
I had a couple of years off being a GA and a tight ends coach. Then I go to Western Carolina University to be the defense coordinator again. Matt Rule is my linebackers coach. And for the next 4 years, we just shaped our coaching philosophies, working together. He eventually moved on to be an offensive line coach and started as an offensive coach. But his start of his career was with me as a defensive guy.
Hold on a second, guys. Hold on a second.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Am I hearing this right? Didn't think I could feel bad for Boogie. Yeah, well, you do now. Boogie should send me a check from part of it from Keemstar for painting him in a good light by comparing him to Collins. But are you guys hearing this like I am? We're probably going to have to cut this up into multiple parts because this thing is what, like, it's almost 40 minutes. Is he trying to say that part of Matt Rule's success has to do with him. Like, oh, he got his start with me. Wow. I have a feeling that's what he's saying.
And that league that we were in was the old Southern Conference, and it was a bunch of triple option. So the interesting piece, even though people are spread and they're multiple and RPOs and all those kind of things, everything defensively, in my opinion, starts with defending the triple option. Dive, quarterback, and pitch. And in all variances.
So everything starts with defending the triple option. As you're talking about today, no one runs a triple option except for service academies. And back when he's saying he was at Western Carolina, RPOs weren't a thing. So this is just like Boogie. We're just going to continue to catch him in lies. Like Boogie lies about everything, like Boogie manipulates everybody and everyone around them, so does Geoff Collins. They are one and the same. We all know how good he is at defending the triple option.
That's
true. He talks about how good he was at defending the triple option here, but he got his ass beat by the Citadel in Atlanta. And the Citadel didn't have a player, I bet. And this is not me putting Tech over. This is me showing how bad of a coach he is. The Citadel didn't have a player that would start for Georgia Tech. They might not have a player that'd be a second string player for Georgia Tech. And he got beat by him. But he's a triple option defending guru. Maybe that's why he ended up hating Paul so much, because he couldn't beat that offense.
What the spread offenses are doing. You watch, Lincoln Riley, they do a great job with the nakeds and the boots and all those kind of things. But the way they do it is still an extension of dive, quarterback, pitch. So everything that we do is gap sound. Every defense that we put in covers every single phase of an offense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's some truth to that, except with like RPOs, it would be dive, quarterback, slant, or dive, quarterback, post. But we're talking over the head of Greg Barnes here. Look at Greg Barnes, by the way. He's totally lost. He ain't got a clue what Collins is talking about.
And we just try to be as multiple as we can to give people headaches. Then after that, I was blessed to go work with Coach Saban, his first year at the University of Alabama, and got ingrained in that coaching philosophy and schematics, rip, Liz, match, cut and cone and all those kind of things that he's become, a legend for. And then it just.
And none of that absorbed into your coaching brain, though. That is maybe the most damning thing about Geoff. He's been around really good coaches. Nick Saban, George O'Leary. Then why, it's like Moneyball. If you're a good coach, why don't you coach good? All that matters is results, no matter what you do. Okay? And what people will say is, oh, well, he was a great coordinator at Florida and at Mississippi State. Well, guys, let's think about how college football operated then, and specifically what types of offenses people ran. Is there anything that's even similar to how college football offenses run today? Maybe Georgia is the closest thing. They're the closest thing to a more traditional pro-style offense. Other than that, man, the game has passed this guy by, and they're in for a rude awakening. All right? These guys are going to wise up to what we already know. And that's that the game has passed this guy by. Maybe he was successful 10, 15 years ago. He's not now, though.
Just kind of all of those experiences kind of grew to when I got the chance to be the defense coordinator at FIU. Took the worst defense in college football and turned it into one of the best. And then I got 4 years with Dan Mullen.
At FIU, yeah, I remember. Guys, don't you remember years ago talking about how FIU was the best team in college football? Again, lie. We need a lie tracker. That's what we need.
At Mississippi State, and then 2 years back-to-back SEC East champions with Jim McElwain at Florida. So all of those experiences at the Division III level, the FCS level, prepared me so when it was my time to be on the biggest and brightest of stages,
you shit the bed. Yeah. When you got the chance to run the program completely the way you wanted to. All right. So it's kind of like if you guys are wrestling fans and you know a guy by the name of Vince Russo. Vince Russo was the head of creator during the Monday Night Wars when The Rock and Steve Austin hit. The thing is, Vince McMahon was able to sort out and throw away the 99 awful ideas and take the one that would work. All right. And like with Vince Russo, when he got to WCW, he was doing a bunch of silly stuff, finger poke of doom with Hulk and all of that. It's the same with Geoff Collins. I think he possibly can be successful in yesteryear when he had a head coach like Nick Saban or McElwain or Matt Rule filtering the 99 stupid things that he wanted to do and keeping the one or two things that might work. And that's what I've been trying to tell North Carolina fans is Mack Brown the guy that can be an appropriate filter for this idiot? No. He's a geriatric bumbling idiot. You know, it's kind of like I like Muhammad Ali, but he fought one too many fights. All right. He took one too many shots of the cocoa nut.
You know, I was ready. And, you know, so I'm just excited to be here with Mack Brown and rocking the Carolina blue.
We've had a unique scenario where we've actually covered Gene Chizik twice.
We have a unique scenario where we absolutely suck at defense and we expect no change now that you're here.
As the coordinator at North Carolina.
Sure.
And when he came back the first time and worked for Larry Fedora back in 2015 and 16, he talked a lot about the change in how the game offensively had shifted since he was with Mack at Texas back in 2005. And then again, when we returned a couple years ago, he kind of said the same thing, that even though he'd been on the sidelines watching as an analyst, there was still a lot of changes that had taken place. So over your coaching career over the last 25, 30 years, has there been a significant change in terms of offensive football? And
it's like he's listening to me, isn't it? The answer is yes. It's infinitely different than when Geoff Collins was a DC. And there's no reason to think he's going to be successful in the new landscape of college football. Why? Because he hasn't been able to be successful in the new landscape of college football when he's in complete and total control of the team, like at Georgia Tech. Kaya says, also, what kind of grown man still goes by Tommy? Be a man and go by Tom. Tommy Ashley is such a brutal name. Yeah, first of all, you have two first names, sir. You only get to pick one. All right, what's it going to be?
How have you seen that develop, and what's the challenges that have kind of caused you issues over the years?
Sure.
And kind of where are things now in terms of
anyone with an IQ above 5 that the OC on the other side of him is what's going to cause the issues for him?
Where you think you are defensively in the mindset against the offenses of today?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me just say that I've got the utmost respect for Gene Chizik, as I'm sure you guys do as well.
Why? Why do you need to have the utmost respect for him? They just fired him. There's no need to put the guy that just got fired over. Again, that's a losing attitude. It's like he loves losers. He's got to put over losers.
Thing that I've been most impressed.
And again, if you're a North Carolina fan, is that what you want to hear? Oh, the guy that just left, how much respect I have for him? No.
Best with and coming here as the defense coordinator is how much ball these guys know. And that's a credit to Coach Chizik. Like, they know what they're doing. They understand the philosophies and how to play the schematics of defense.
If they know so much, why are they such an awful defense? This is the most backwards way of thinking. And that's the problem. Like, he doesn't understand what it takes to be successful. He just doesn't.
And they understand offenses as well. And I think that's a huge testament to him and his contribution to this great place. Interestingly, the year that I took off was absolutely amazing for me because I got to study from a non-emotional kind of outsider looking in. I did a bunch of consulting work, even consulted with some media gurus.
That's where he would be best placed, by the way. In my opinion, he's not a coach. What he really wants to do, let's call it what it is. He wants to do what Wreck does. All right. But no one believes what he says, so he can't.
And just watch ball with him from a perspective that was great for me. And just to see all the motions, all the shifts that are starting to, come about, all the misdirection, all the unbalance, and be able to sit there and formulate some plans so that when I'm back in this chair, I'm ready, was really good for me. But I think the biggest thing over the last couple of years is the multitude of formations, motion shifts, constant eye candy before almost every snap.
Which, while he was the head coach at Georgia Tech, we were great at falling for. We're all about the eye candy
that you see nowadays. And it just goes back to being sound with your gaps, sound with your assignments, sound with your fundamentals of how you're going to play the game. And, that'll carry over to having success defensively.
When you're looking at all the tape and analyzing it all, who do you turn to pick their brain?
There's a lot of guys. I was texting with Dan Quinn, the head coach for the.
So let's just think about that. It's like the who's of awful coaches in the city of Atlanta. Who's the one guy you go to pick their brain, breaking down film of modern college football? First of all, not a guy who's ever coached college football to my knowledge. Dan Quinn, a guy that screwed up a game that was won, a Super Bowl that was flat out won because he couldn't run the football when all you needed to ice a game, a Super Bowl game, was a field goal. That's who he goes to. Okay.
Washington Commanders last night. He's somebody that I've gained a lot of respect for. So when I became the defense coordinator at Florida, he had been there, I think, 2 years prior, and then he went and took over at the Legion of Boom with the Seattle Seahawks. And we kind of became friendly, and I had such a admiration and affection for Pete Carroll and what he had.
It's interesting that he admires a guy who also had some success as a DC, but once he got control of a team was more of a cheerleader and less of a coach, which, in my opinion, is what Dan Quinn is. Also, it wouldn't surprise me if he said that just to take a shot at Atlanta. John Burns says, just how many 3rd and 15s did Tech's defense give up? We'd be here all night counting them, sir.
It always done defensively, and being able to get that knowledge firsthand from Coach Quinn, and just our relationship has remained, good, and been able to bounce ideas off of him. But there's so many guys. I don't want to name too many and then leave somebody out that's one of my dudes.
Yeah.
And, they
just name an awful Atlanta coach. Okay.
Getting their feelings, but I'm blessed to have great relationships with a lot of great coaches, and
so many that I can't name more than one.
The sharing of ideas and knowledge. We do that all the time.
When you look back on your career to this point, you mentioned the defensive coordinator.
Also, I didn't notice the audio setup these guys have is like what truck drivers wear as a hands-free device, or what NSYNC wore back in the 90s when they were doing Bye, Bye, Bye. I mean, these guys are supposed to be professional. I have an infinitely more professional setup than they do. But anyways, let's look at their NSYNC headsets here.
Coordinator positions, but you were head coach there at Georgia Tech.
Here we go. Georgia Tech.
Positions, but you were head coach there at Georgia Tech. What is the difference and the I guess toughness of being a guy that likes to have hands-on for being a head coach and sort of managing a team and a roster and all those stuff that comes with it versus being a DC and actually being able to coach?
Right.
What an absolute garbage question. First of all, it's a leading question. He said there were going to be some hard questions. What he should have asked is, what happened at Georgia Tech? You had success as a coordinator. Why didn't it work at Tech? That's not a mean or malicious question. It's a fair question. Instead, he frames it like, oh, you need to be more hands-on. Who's saying you can't be hands-on as a head coach? I mean, we've all seen the clips of Nick Saban at practice busting people's asses for not doing right. It's a false premise that sets him up for a way out of being an awful head coach.
Right. Well, twofold. So when I was the head coach at Temple University, was able to take over for my dear friend Matt Rule, and
make them worse. He won't admit that. Yeah, he took over an already, established group of 5 team with a really good college head coach and made them worse. That's what he did.
He had tremendous success. I think I'm the winningest head coach in the first 2 years at Temple University, and we had it rolling. It was a great.
That's how you know you're a loser. That's how you know you're a loser. When you're bragging about being the winningest head coach in the first 2 years of a school no one cares about. No one cares about, that's in one of the worst cities in the country, Philadelphia. That'd be like going to your job interview and being like, I was the most successful fry cook at McDonald's. Like anyone should care about that. Geoff Collins is the McDonald's fry cook of college football.
Culture, we had great players, and I was able to be a head coach, but also be in the defensive meeting room with the coaches every day. The defensive unit meeting was an integral part of the defensive staff, while still being able to be a very successful head coach.
No, you weren't. You weren't a successful head coach. What are you talking about?
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you stake?
That's fake news. You weren't okay, so you took over a team that was handed to you as already being developed under Matt Rule and had a worse record than Matt Rule did there. He asked you about Georgia Tech, and you're talking about some team no one cares about in Philadelphia. Answer the question, you slimy loser.
The first year at the last place was pretty much the same. I was in the defensive meetings, and then the next.
He won't even call it by name at the last place, the first year at the last place. And he's admitting that he was as hands-on in the defense as he was anywhere else that he was a head coach at the last place. This guy, man. I would think for 11 million plus, I could at least say my last employer's name.
Next year, COVID hits, and combining that with all the.
Oh, it was COVID's fault. College football Heisman Trophy winner, COVID, according to Geoff Collins. And this is what you're going to find out for any North Carolina fans that watches this. He's going to absolutely body your defense and make them worse than when he took them over, and then he's going to blame something that isn't him. What was the pandemic something that only happened in Atlanta? Was the pandemic just isolated to the city of Atlanta? Or was that a global thing? That affected every college football team in the country. Grow up.
Things that had to be, adjusted, and things we were doing as a head coach to modernize the program.
Yep, that's a shot at the triple option, by the way. And look, there's a tactful way of doing that. Everyone understood the situation he took over, and it was going to be difficult, all right? But he's used that as a crutch and excuse for the fact that he's the worst head coach of any football team at any level that has ever existed. Your peewee football coach from when you were a little kid is better than this guy as it pertains to being a head coach.
My attention got away from the defense and
so now he wasn't involved in the defense. So at first, yep, it started off, I was heavily involved with the defense, and then the pandemic hit, and it's isolated to Atlanta somewhere, and I wasn't so involved with the defense. Well, let me ask you something. Then why was it the minute you left, Andrew Thacker was an infinitely better DC? Why was it when you left game 1, we go on the road, 3 touchdown underdogs and get a win, and the only difference is that you're not there? Why can't someone ask him about that?
It became a lot about protocols and all of those kind of things that went with the times that we were living in. But I'd say that you can do it. The first 3 years I was a head coach, I was able to do it. And, I had to move away the next couple of years to
look, Tom Ashley and idiot Greg Barnes even know that's a load of bullshit. And that's what it is. You can tell even these guys who clearly don't know anything about football that are trying to cup this man's balls don't even buy that line of nonsense.
Big picture things. And there's been a lot of things too in my year off that I've gone back and really self-reflected on what I could have done better, how I would have handled things different, knowing what we know now.
I'd be really interested to hear what he thinks he could have done different. Maybe actually running practice, maybe not, having pool noodles at practice, maybe not stopping practice to have people look at how tight your shirt sleeves are, maybe not talking about the new outfits you got for the coaches and press conferences, maybe not saying that if you don't see the improvement in the team, then you don't want to see it, and then proceeding to get your absolute ass drug 100-0 in the next 2 games by Notre Dame and your rival. Maybe I'd like to hear about that.
But the best thing about that for me is I'm getting a master class every day from Mack Brown in how to be a head coach. Just watching him on.
Yeah, a well-known guy that's washed up, well past his prime, a guy that screws up talented teams, a guy that loses the last 4 games of the season like clockwork, and a guy that can't beat the team. North Carolina's so bad they couldn't beat a Geoff Collins coach team. I'm pretty sure North Carolina is the only team that Geoff Collins blew out. There weren't many wins. There were 10 wins in his entire 3 1/4 season career at Tech. And North Carolina was like 2 of them, right?
Staff meetings, watching him run team meetings, even how he does our 7-on-7 camps or high school camps, the speeches that he gives before and after official visits. It has just been such a blessing for me. I
mean, who is like more competent? Like, who would you think has more mental acumen? Like Joe Biden or Mack Brown? Because it's not clear to me.
Early in my career, I noticed my trend was I was a defense coordinator. Then I would do something else for the next couple of years, whether it be a GA or a position coach, be a defense coordinator again, go back to being a recruiting coordinator, position coach again, then a defensive coordinator. And then now I've gone from the defense coordinator to now.
I would too, Tech Man. And by the way, he talks about maybe he gets to it, but I doubt it. He talks about that he reflected on what he could have done better at Tech, and then immediately pivots to, how great Mack Brown is. A coach, by the way, make no mistake about it, is on the hot seat right now. And it won't be something where he's announced as fired. It'll be he's retiring, but it won't be his choice. There's a very real possibility that Mack Brown gets fired after this season, especially with the schedule they have. If they drop like 4 or 5 games, if I'm a North Carolina fan, I'm wanting to fire him 100%. I'd take Biden over Mack Brown. I would too.
Now being a head,
because at least Biden knows when to step down, doesn't he? Something Mack Brown hasn't figured out yet.
Coach at 2 different places. Now I get to step back and watch a Hall of Famer every single day do what God made him to do. And it's just been such a blessing for me, and such a growth opportunity, to be involved in this program and to see him navigate and manage this entire new landscape of college football with poise, with class.
This is a guy he's talking about class. It's a guy that got mad at Pat Narduzzi for going for 2 and getting it when it made sense to do so. He ripped his hand away like he was starting a chainsaw because he was pissed and he's an immature kid. Geoff Collins wouldn't know the first thing about class. It's a disgrace that he's even mentioning it here, even when that guy has eyebrows that look like something you'd see on the Bert and Ernie Muppets.
With true love of his players, and that's something that's very important to me. And to see him being able to do it and win as many games as he has won and continue to do it with such energy and spirit and all those kind of things is just it's a blessing. I get to be in this spot.
Yeah, Mack Brown is a Hall of Fame coach, and he was at his best way back at Texas, and he won a national title when he had a guy named Vince Young, right? That's not taking anything away from him, but that's kind of like saying, Muhammad Ali is one of the greatest fighters of all time. Would you want him in there betting on him when he's 45? No. And that's the equivalent of what Mack Brown is. Mack Brown has probably lost more games favored by more points in the last 10 years than any coach in college football.
Coach, some of our younger viewers may only know you really from your head coaching experience. So that they may not know the immense amount of success you had in the SEC as a defensive coordinator, where you earned the nickname the Minister of Mayhem.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Oh my God. Look how happy he is. By the way, guys, this is a nickname he gave to himself. The fun part of nicknames is that someone else gives it to you, right? And then it kind of takes on a life of his own. Yeah, he has this shit-eating grin on his face, like someone just farted in the room or something, which him calling him the Minister of Mayhem is the equivalent of just farting in a room somewhere. He earned the moniker Minister of Mayhem, but not in the way that these guys or Geoff thinks he earned it. He is a Minister of Mayhem internally. He's like an ICBM for your defense, right? That's what he is. He's a tactical nuke for any success you're going to have defensively, all right? He doesn't want to talk about Georgia Tech or what happened there or schematic things. He'd rather talk about nicknames. And make no mistake about it. Look at the grin on this guy's face. He knows how silly it is. He can't even keep a straight face asking him about this stupid, inane, senseless nickname that this dummy has given to himself.
Right. So for our viewers here, what's the basis of that?
Sure.
Not necessarily the nickname, but your philosophy in terms of being aggressive, creating chaos, those types of things.
Well, the first thing, and this is what Coach Quinn and I were talking about last night.
Yeah, they 100%. He knew all the questions they were going to ask. He provided that beforehand, which there's not a problem with that. I've done interviews like that. But he wanted this question asked. I guarantee you he said, ask me about the Minister of Mayhem. It's really cool stuff.
Tonight is everything is about getting off the field and creating turnovers defensively.
Now, he is good at creating turnovers, just not defensively. Jeff Sims was great at creating turnovers, and our whole offense the whole time he was there. I mean, this is a guy that hired Dave Patno to be his OC. And since leaving Tech, since Tech forced them to fire that guy, has not coached a down of college football since he left Tech.
You want to get the ball back for your offense as fast as you can. 3 and out or 1 and out, creating turnovers, getting a 3 and out. The best way to do that is by putting teams in 3rd and long. And to put teams in 3rd and long.
Again, he is an expert in 3rd and long, but while he was a head coach at Georgia Tech, He got our offenses in many 3rd and longs, and he gave up a ton of 3rd and longs defensively for Tech. So I will give him the benefit of the doubt there. He's an expert on 3rd and long.
You've got to be aggressive. It doesn't mean you have to be just wild and crazy, but calculated, planned out attacks on protections or in the run game to get them in 2nd and 12, to get them to 3rd and 14, to get them off schedule so that then they've got to throw for the first. And then when you do that, tips and overthrows and sacks and cause fumbles, those are the times that those things happen. So our whole objective, even when we're playing base defense, is to create tackles for loss, create sacks, create mayhem, and then that leads to turnovers. And I think,
again, all I have to say is Citadel. All right, having a triple option roster has nothing to do with your defense, and he couldn't stop them. All right, so yeah, he's a minister of mayhem. All right,
it's well documented in the annals of football that if you create more turnovers than the opponent, you probably have a higher likelihood of winning the game. So the whole mayhem rate, I think the last 4 years I was the DC in the SEC, we led the country in havoc rate.
I'm sorry, sir. Mayhem rate doesn't exist anywhere other than the insanity between your ears. What the hell is mayhem rate? Speak in terms that exist outside of the Looney Tunes between your ears. What the hell is mayhem rate? That's something you made up.
Mayhem rate. And, that's something we're trying to, instill in these guys since we've been here in January to understand that concept, to just great tackles for loss, to get sacks, get offenses off schedule.
Okay, I think I know what he means by mayhem rate now. By mayhem rate, he means he doesn't give up a 50-yard touchdown. So anything shy of that probably goes into his, fictional nonsense mayhem rate.
And then the turnovers will come.
Yeah, and to share some numbers, and these may not be up to date with what you have, but
they're not going to be up to date because if you go to anything in the last 4 or 5 years, it's going to look awful for them. So you're going to have to go back in the annals, or as Geoff probably likes to go, the annals of history.
This is kind of what I've just found. To back that up, when you look at plays that are drives that have no negative plays, offense scores 52% of the time. And
okay, so let's write this down. So when you don't give up any negative plays, the offense scores 52% of the time. Let's state that another way for people that aren't idiots. When you're giving up some yardage every single play is a way more intelligent way of stating that.
And when you look at drives that have a sack, that number drops to 16% of the time that offenses are scoring.
Wow, these guys have figured out college football, haven't they? When you get a sack and put them behind the yard to gain, so they're in a 2nd and 16 or a 3rd and 20 or something, they're less likely to score. Yeah, this is totally specific to Geoff. That's something he's figured out with his mayhem factor or mayhem metric, whatever the hell he calls it.
Jay Bateman was very big on that type of statistics to kind of figure out, like, hey, because when Butch Davis was here, not quite 20 years ago, at that point they were just saying, okay, well, don't look so much at the total defensive yards, start looking at yards per play.
All right, so now not only do these guys not know football, they don't know basic math. All right, don't look at the total yards, look at yards per play. How do you think yards per play are calculated? You take the total yards and divide it by the number of plays. They're telling you a similar thing. I mean, that almost makes me madder than anything, that you just don't understand averages or how they're calculated.
And it's just funny how in a very short time we've advanced so much, and now we're saying, okay, well, look, if you have a negative play, that increases your opportunity to get off the field, 2 and 3.
Man, this is hard to listen to. Yeah, these guys splitting atoms in Chapel Hill here. Yeah. I mean, God, we could figure out. We could, listening to these guys, we could come up with a grand unified theory that merges the quantum world with the general relativity world of Einstein. You know, we could figure out quantum computing listening to these idiots talk about, hey, more negative plays means less touchdowns for the offense. More sacks means they're less likely to convert. These are things that you learn in middle school football.
Fold.
Right.
So, in terms of your approach, kind of what are some numbers that you're most important to you? I know you've mentioned turnovers, those types of things. Is there like a percentage of getting off the field on third down that you're looking for? Any bullet points like that?
Is there a percentage that you're looking to get off the field on third down? Every single time if you're on defense, and every single time you want to convert if you're on offense. This is how much of an idiot he is. They have to provide him with just the most absolute basic, not even mathematically, sensible things, softballs for him to nibble on. We're at a time where if you get a negative play, you have a higher chance of stopping them from scoring. Yeah, that's football, bud. Yeah, that's what they're saying, Zach. They might be splitting the album in Triangle Park, but they won't let these dumbasses in there. They might break something. I wonder if Collins has a disdain for Brent Key since his replacement. I can tell you for a fact, that he has disdain for Brent Key. Geoff Collins thinks that Brent Key formed some kind of coup to get him out. Had nothing to do with the fact that, speaking of third down conversion rates, there wasn't a third and long enough that a team wouldn't convert while he was at Georgia Tech. There wasn't a third and short enough we couldn't convert on offense. But this guy is someone who cannot take responsibility for his shortcomings. You're going to find that out if you're a North Carolina fan. Cannot do it. He was directly asked, about Georgia Tech, and he said he reflected on his time there, couldn't tell you one thing he's learned from that experience. And now we're to a point where we have to talk about, if you make negative plays on defense, that's good. Negative play, good. That's where we've gotten to.
That you preach to the guys?
So creating turnovers, getting sacks, creating tackles for loss are
Tommy's not lost. He's embarrassed that he's a part of this. I have a feeling Tommy probably knows the most about football in this entire panel, including Geoff. And he's just like, speaking of getting dumber for having listened to something, I feel like that scene in Billy Madison. We're all now dumber for having heard this, and God have mercy on our souls for having heard it. That's the face that you're seeing right there with Tommy.
Hyped up to the nth degree out at practice and in games in our defensive meeting rooms. But I've also been brainwashed by Coach Saban in the process. And every play has a life of its own. You got to stay in the moment, get the huddle call, know what your assignment, see what the offense is doing, attacking, doing your job, then put that play to bed and play the next play. So I don't really look at those things, but you just know that when you're playing great defense, you're getting turnovers, you're creating 3 and outs, you're getting tackles for loss, and you're getting sacks, and you're negating big plays. So
we've all learned something. One of the tenets of defense is negative plays and sacks and turnovers. And this is a guy that is so shameless, he's going to name drop Nick Saban like he learned a thing from the guy. Nick Saban is one of the greatest defensive minds to ever do it. And I don't even think it's arguable he is the greatest college football coach of all time. Let me tell you something about Nick Saban. Nick Saban's someone who was able to change with the changing landscape of college football. Remember when he first took over Alabama, it was more Iowa-like where, just don't have a field general quarterback, just don't turn the ball over on offense, score some points, but defense is the forefront. Then he saw the direction college football was going and hired a guy named Lane Kiffin. And their offense has not been the same since. It was one of the smartest hires I think that was ever made at Alabama, other than hiring Nick. They changed their offense. Does any of that sound like anything you could relate to Geoff Collins? No, Geoff Collins is, we're going to do the same dumb thing over and over and over again, and then blame everyone else, including the fans, when it doesn't work out. We're going to blame the fans. We're going to blame some virus. I mean, it makes me legitimately mad.
So even though we are highly aggressive and we have a multitude of coverages and pressures and coverages behind said pressures, we want to keep people in front of us as well and not give up explosive plays also.
Yeah, I don't like. So I guess you were asking if Key hates him. I'm sure Key dislikes him greatly, if not hates him. But you know what? Key's someone who actually does have class. Key don't have time to worry about the stupid, silly nonsense that Geoff Collins does. Key's worried about, unlike Geoff Collins, winning football games. All right? That's why he never mentions them. And since Geoff Collins has been fired, even in his introductory press conference, has never mentioned Geoff Collins' name once. That's because he's focused on different things, and that's because he's a different breed of human being.
Coach, you mentioned the word aggressive a lot, and we've heard that a ton since you've gotten there. First of all, define that not from a coaching perspective, but from a player, like inside the mind of a player. Can you coach being aggressive for a player that's either not aggressive or hasn't been used to that, or how does that work?
I take back what I said about Tommy. This is an idiotic question. Some undefinable thing in the mind of a player. What is aggressiveness? How the hell would Collins know? Do I exist inside? Do I share brains with another person? No, I don't really care what's going on in their brain. Just get to the ball carrier. Make a tackle, get to the ball carrier. Whatever needs to happen inside your mind for that to happen, do that.
Still in a team like North Carolina where you've got a ton of talent on the defensive side.
That's never mattered ever.
Producing before you got there. How do you manage that aspect of it?
Sure, and all these comments are not a compare and contrast of what happened before, because I never want to come off that way. But just the thing I told him the first meeting we ever had was, we've got to change the way we think. We've got to change the way we play the game, and we've got to play aggressive. We've got to play fast, and a lot of that comes from I try to create freedom in the guys when they go out there and play and when they go out there and practice. I like to do all the mental work for them and then give them tips and tools so they can cut it loose and play as fast as they can.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Does anyone have any clue what he's talking about right now? I like to take care of the mental part for them. Geez, guys, I'm sorry. I didn't know that's how it worked. Let me take care of the mental part for you. I don't even know what to say about that. What does that mean? As a player, you've got to have the mental fortitude to identify what's happening and put yourself in the right position to make a play. That's not something a coach can do for you. A coach can help you develop that, right? And show you film and work with you in practice so that you know how to recognize when something's happening offensively and you need to be in a certain spot. Again, I mean, the guy does not understand coaching today. He just doesn't.
And when you're playing fast and you're playing free, I think a natural aggression, does come out, and a natural physicality comes out when you play this game. Every day that we meet, we always meet as a unit.
And speaking of working mentally, none of that's happening here. If you're looking for anyone with a working brain or anything happening mentally, this ain't the place to find it.
I always show a highlight film of red dot, green dot. So if it's a green dotted play and somebody's video comes up and they have a green dot around them, this is about to be really good. And we're about to hype it up, and the guys are going to get excited. And
so he plays red light, green light, a game that we all played in kindergarten with grown men, defensive football players. Not a shock to me.
To see the standard of execution and the standard of physicality we want to play with in pursuit. Well, then if there's a red dot, that's not very good. So the kids already know that it's going to be constructive criticism out of love. Here's what we don't want to do, the actions, whether it's an assignment or in the manner in which we played the play, so that there's just a standard of execution, a standard of pursuit, a standard of tackling, a standard that we finish plays every single play. So I just think it's the upholding, understanding the standard, and then upholding the standard on a daily basis and creating a scheme that is learnable.
Does it again? Does anyone have any clue what he's talking about? We've gone from negative plays, good, sacks good, to red light good, or red light bad, green light good. That's where we've gone to.
Learnable, relatable, so that they can just get out there, they get the call, and they can cut it loose and play as fast as they can.
Yeah, Power Eccles, Des Evans both mentioned that
Sure.
when we talked to them about being able to play free. And I want to reiterate what you said before you answered that, is that this is not a compare and contrast to the past. This is.
You see how careful they are to not mention tech? This isn't a compare and contrast to tech. I don't want to compare and contrast. Why? That's how you grow. If you can't learn from your mistakes, then how are you ever going to be a better coach? Like, I don't understand that. Guaranteed his daughter taught him how to play red light, green light. Yes, he's admitted he talks to his daughter and tells his daughter before she goes to bed the height and weight of all the defensive players, which is maybe the weirdest thing I've ever heard someone doing. You're telling me that your daughter cares at all about, the height and weight of all these guys? Weird. It's just weird, man.
It's for us trying to let folks understand what makes Geoff Collins, which is why I asked the first question.
Yeah, that way leads to madness. Trying to figure out what makes Geoff Collins, you'll start, the next thing you know, you'll find the guy throwing his own poop at the wall. You don't want to go down that road.
Now, does scheme determine physicality? Does approach determine physicality, or is it strictly within the player themselves?
Scheme does not determine physicality. If that were the case, it wouldn't matter the skill level of the defensive players that you're coaching. You would just have the correct scheme and it would work. I don't know why this is difficult.
So, and what's your challenge coming in? You've had a lot of experience in a lot of different jobs. What's the challenge coming in being a quote unquote new guy? Sure. When you've got guys that have been around for a long time?
So one of the biggest things that I wanted to do when I got here for the off season and then during spring ball, and now we're getting to work with them this summer too, is I wanted to find what each kid does best, what each young man does best with his skill set. I also threw a lot at him. We played a lot of coverages. We had a ton of blitzes, a ton of fronts. I wanted to see
what is this? What do you keep doing this for? I'm not going to say it, but I think we all know
what we could play as a group and individually. Coach Brown, and I've always been this way throughout my career, want to play a lot of guys. Well, with that, as a defensive play caller, I want to know who's in the game for me.
Yeah, it would be advantageous as the defensive coordinator to know who's on the field during a game at any given time. I'm glad that we're learning all of these absolute secrets and coaching gems from Geoff Collins.
Because there's some players, if they're in the game, I'm not going to move a lot. I'm not going to stun a lot. I might not even blitz a lot. Other guys are in the game. I'm stunning, I'm moving, I'm playing a little more man coverage, I'm playing a little more zone coverage with certain guys.
Yeah, not only does he not know who's on the field at any given time, he doesn't know how many players are on the field at any given time. No one came down there. I guess they didn't come down there where Geoff lives and tell him, you can only have 11 on the field at the time. Someone mentioned it in the chat a minute ago. We took a timeout during a game, and then after the timeout, got a penalty for too many players on the field. I don't remember if that was offense or defense. It doesn't matter. He was the head coach. So You know, that he would pretend like he even knows the number of players on the field, let alone who's on the field, is laughable.
So I like to plan out and script who is in the game so that I can call plays accordingly based on what our guys can do. Whether that be an odd front, whether that be a 4-down even front, whether it be a bare front, it is what our players and specifically each individual player can do to help us play at a high level.
Again, this is just coaching one-on-one. Obviously, everyone is going to have something they do better than something else as a defensive player. And obviously, based on that, is going to determine what type of scheme you want to run, or whether you want to blitz like he's talking about or stunt more. Obviously, that's coaching 101. Something new, Geoff.
And I think that the thing that's enabled me to do that is my wealth of experience that I've gained over the years. There's not, like, if you look at my defenses from FIU, they don't look anything like my defenses at Mississippi State. The Mississippi State, I was watching it today, making a cut up, a teach tape for tomorrow. My defenses at Mississippi State don't look anything like the defenses at Florida. And the defenses at Temple were a kind of hybrid between Mississippi State and Florida. This iteration of what we're going to produce at University of North Carolina, I don't know which version it's going to fit into.
I believe that. I believe he doesn't know what his defense is going to look like. That's probably why he blacked out his spring game, so no one else would realize that he doesn't know what his defense is going to be. Again, you know, he's not gonna mention Tech and the awful thing that is, but he basically just said, yeah, what allows me to do these very basic coaching 101 things is my vast experience of being a coach. And he's telling you, as a coach, he's never moved beyond, you know, step 2 of how to be a successful coach.
You know, as we enter the season. And I'm definitely not telling with, you know, Minnesota listening as well.
He's terrified of Minnesota. Terrified of them. It will not surprise me one bit if they go on the road to Minnesota and not only get beat, but Minnesota hangs 40 on them. Would not surprise me.
Right. Coach, you have an educational background in psychology.
Sure.
Did you?
What? I guess he majored in something psychology. Yeah, that's kind of like the Joker, you know, having some kind of psychology degree. He's only used it for madness.
Think you would use that component of your education so much once you became a football coach?
Yeah, that's actually one of the pieces that I love the most. My meeting tomorrow with the guys is going to be a lot about precognitive recognition and living in the moment.
Yeah, I've called you all in a meeting today to talk about Sigmund Freud and the anal stage. We're going to talk about the oral stage Wednesday before practice.
Those kind of things. So it's great that I had those foundational backgrounds in psychology. And then I read a million books on it as well. I was talking to Will Hardy yesterday.
Are we talking to Cat Williams now? I read 1 million books on psychology. And what I learned is that red light is bad and green light is good. And I also learned through my extensive psychological background is that if you do good things, then good things happen. And if you do bad things, then bad things happen.
There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Blink, and it is the whole process of knowing something without even having to think about it, thin slicing, those kind of, you know, concepts. And it's nice to be around a bunch of guys that you can kind of have that, those conversations with while still having an edge and still, you know, talking about flying to the ball and talking about Mayhem. You can still get into philosophical, deep conversation.
Yeah, his psychological background is probably like reading A Clockwork Orange and trying to implement that to his fan base. You know, like that would be the greatest torture ever. He talks about all these defenses he coaches. You could just see like our eyes pinned open, having to watch, you know, his Tech defenses that he doesn't want to talk about. I would choose death over that.
Conversations with the guys, and then they can still use that knowledge and then play with, you know, reckless abandon as well.
Jesus Christ, dude. I mean, like, what do you even say to that? Again, that's 100% something he wanted asked. Like, that was so ham-fisted how that question came in. So I'll just tell you how I do interviews. Sometimes people will want questions ahead of time. I don't have a problem with that. But I like to ask new questions that fit the interview. So they bring something up. So like with JP Powell, he talked about the Fly Boys unprompted. Oh, tell me about the Fly Boys. You're not going to hear him bring up the Fly Boys and then me ask about sports psychology because it's stupid and doesn't make any sense.
You mentioned earlier that offenses now are doing a lot more motion. I know it used to be just up tempo, and now it's multi-tempo.
Sure.
So you're getting a lot of different looks, but you're also talking about we got to slow it down and make it instinctual for the guys. How do you balance that when the offense is throwing so much at you to get the guys in position where they're not panicking, trying to figure out every little thing they're seeing?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes with me. And
also, Colin's audio is jacked up way louder than theirs to the point it hurts my ears a little bit. But if I don't want to have to keep pulling it, but my phaser back and forward. But anyway,
how I can handle the game as well. Early in my career, I think 2 years of my career as a coordinator, I was up in the box. Then the spread, no huddle, things started happening. And I felt my best contribution was being on the field. I can feel the game. I can feel the tempo. I can feel when guys, are stressed, not being able to look at me. Well, I'm not going to give them a long call.
They don't want to look at you because you're awful at what you do, and they're embarrassed that they have to listen to what you say. Has nothing to do with anything that's happening in the game other than they're getting their ass beat.
If somebody is going really, really fast. And so I try to take as many of the checks and adjustments out of their hands, and I handle it. And then they just have to know there's techniques that we build into every single thing that we do. We drill those techniques across all positions every single day. So you've seen us out there. We'll do a blitz circuit. We'll do a turnover circuit. We'll do a DDF circuit, whatever it is, fire zone circuit, whatever. And they just have to know what part of the technique they're being asked to do to execute that part of the defense. So we can do a lot of stuff because guys just need to apply whatever technique it is to the call. And those techniques, I move those around in the defenses that we play.
Well, then why didn't we see anything remotely like that at Tech, right? He's in charge of everything. He gets to run it the way he wanted. All we heard while he was at Tech, even though he wants to blame the pandemic for all the 3-9 seasons he had, all we saw was 50, 40-yard wide open touchdown throws when there wasn't a guy within 15 yards of the guy. I bet that happened during his tenure at Tech 30 or more times. There was just a wide open, flat out blown coverage. For any North Carolina fan that's listening, I'll tell you why that is. Because when he breaks down practice, he's not concerned with getting to the right spot as much as, oh, the guy's just running really fast. He talked about that at Tech. Oh, the guys were moving an average of however many miles an hour at practice. Well, that's all so useless if they're going, 15 miles an hour biting on the play fake or on the fake jet sweep or whatever. But he's because, we just got to love on these kids. He's just looking at pulling some positive out of it. Well, sometimes kids don't just need to be loved on, or these players just don't know, need to hear how great they're doing. Sometimes you need to tell them the truth. All right. He talks about, he wants to put over Nick so much. Nick, how often did you hear Nick talk about just loving on these players and being positive? I don't think I ever once heard him say that.
I hope that wasn't too convoluted of an answer, but
it wasn't convoluted. It was just incredibly stupid.
I just try to make it as simple for the guys so they can just cut it loose, execute, do their job, and let's roll.
No, that's great. And when you call in plays, are you calling in to the middle linebacker? Are you calling in to each line? Or are you calling in to everybody?
So interesting. So I think we're about to see a monumental shift again in offensive football. Now using the headsets and the green dots on the helmet.
And we've already established his experience with green dots. So look out, college football, because Geoff Collins has been playing red light, green light, and you put a little green dot on the helmets. So now he'll know the guy who he wants to sack, who's passing the football.
Helmet communication. So it'll be interesting how each team uses these new rules, and the microphones are supposed to cut off at 15 seconds. So
that's not new, by the way. They did that last season. It's just that Geoff Collins couldn't find anyone willing to hire him. This is not new in college football. They've done this for a full season now.
Can you use the microphone to communicate, the walkie-talkie to communicate? Are you going to have to still signal?
Again, he wouldn't know because he was sitting on his ass without a job when this was implemented. So maybe North Carolina has someone who did coach last year that could fill him in on this.
We will have all those methods in place. And it's going to be interesting to see these first 3 weeks, how offenses adjust and then how we adjust to the newness of all of this.
You mentioned
again, it's not new. It's only new to Geoff.
DDF. Can you explain that?
That's old George O'Leary saying, deliver, disengage, and finish. So when somebody's coming to block you, you've got to deliver the blow, then you've got to get off the block, and then you've got to finish to the ball carrier or the next, person that's trying.
This is, again, Geoff complicating things further than they need to be. Just, you could simplify all this to just tackle the ball carrier. If someone tries to block you, knock them on their ass or avoid them. We don't need deliver, disengage, tickle balls, look to crowd, show armband. That's what Geoff is doing. Appreciate it, Nerd Stop. Member of the channel for 4 months says, I've been a member for an elite amount of time. I've been commenting at a high level for longer. Really just a bunch of hard-playing fellas in chat. Comment of the night. Thank you, Nerd Stop. Jared Fry says, he's a guy who knows how to deliver a blow. I think he's a guy who knows how to receive one, but I get your point.
Trying to block you. And that's one of our circuits. So there's all kinds of different drills that we have that, Ted Monachino teaches a defeated leverage drill. Tommy Thigpen teaches a long arm drill. And those are just different ways that we teach at all levels of the defense, how we attack blocks with violence and aggression, get off blocks, and then finish to the ball carrier.
So let's back up a little bit. We're talking with Geoff Collins.
Let's back up a little bit because that was really dumb and made no sense. Let's try to get on a topic that makes slightly more sense.
Collins, North Carolina defensive coordinator, has been gracious with his time.
Sure.
I want to ask you, when you had that time off, you certainly knew about North Carolina. You
call it what it is. It wasn't. They're presenting it like he was on a vacation, a planned vacation. He got shit canned. That's what happened. So ask the question the proper way. What were you doing in the time your ass was fired?
The opportunity of a job at North Carolina comes, you watch a lot of tape. When you get on campus, finally, I guess in January, what surprised you the most about the program? And we've talked about Mack Brown, but about the program, but about the talented players you had on defense.
Well, I was approached about a lot of jobs.
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you stake?
He might have been approached about a lot of jobs. I don't, whatever many that is. They weren't jobs that anyone would want to have with his experience. I believe that FIU might have hit him up since he wants to put them over. So I believe that, low level or below teams, there wasn't a single, I would be willing to bet this, Power 4 team that was going to hire him to be DC, though.
And I went down the road with a couple of them, but this one stood out to me because of Mack Brown, family in the area, all those kind of things. But then I started watching all the tape, and there's really good players on this roster.
Appreciate the $2 super chat from Nerd says, no, Rec, he knows how to give blows. Ask Nate. I did say that. So I'll tell you how I know this is complete and utter BS. From the moment he was fired at Georgia Tech, he was sniffing the jock strap of every Power 4 coach that would have him. He goes to Kirby spring practice, a team who he proposed to hate at Georgia Tech, a team that he said he hated so much, everything red on Georgia Tech campus had to be removed. All right. Next thing you know, he's up there just, yes, Kirby. He goes to Pat Narduzzi's spring practice at Pitt, a guy who he made a complete ass out of himself in front of when Pitt beat him. So if there was a single job that was Power 4 coordinator level or above that was offered to him, 100% he would have taken it. All right. Think of every head coach that falls in the category of like Will Muschamp, guy that just wasn't a head coach, but was a great coordinator. They get hired like that. They don't sit on their asses for a year and a half if they have a good offer on the table. So we know he's completely full of crap here.
Defensively, the front seven, I mean, it's I don't want to over hype it how I feel, but I'm really excited about the guys that we have in the front four. Power Echols, I think he's one of the best leaders that I've ever been around.
Yeah, Geoff Collins wouldn't know a leader on the football team if they slapped him in the face with their balls, okay? You know who Geoff Collins thought was a leader when he was at Georgia Tech? The kicker. Never heard a coach talk about a kicker being a leader quite like Geoff Collins. It was the guy from Tennessee that transferred in. Trying to remember his name. Chickamauga, something like that. He says this guy's this incredible leader, this kicker, and he gets a personal foul penalty after he misses a kick. So now not only does the team get the ball where we missed the kick, but they get it 15 yards further up. You know? Any reasonable head coach might have even kicked the kid off the team. He certainly would get an ass chewing on the sideline if you're a kicker and draw a personal foul penalty. That's who Geoff Collins identifies as a leader.
Great player, one of the best in the league. And then Amari Campbell, he's really good as well. And then on the back end, you've got Elijah Huzzy, you've got Marcus Allen, who played a ton of ball. And then Jakeem Harris comes in, Stick Lane, Will Hardy. You get a healthy Dre Boykins back, two-sport Caleb Cost playing at the star position. Shout out to our baseball team as well. Hats off to them. But it's just there. It is a talented roster, and defensively. And
Question for the chat: if he respects Chizik so much, and Chizik is such a great coach that he's worthy of this esteem that Geoff Collins gives him, and these players are so great and so talented and such great leaders, why was Geoff Collins even needed in the first place? Why did they fire Gene Chizik? Nothing this guy says makes sense.
Just excited. I think the first meeting, I had with him, thing I learned a long time ago, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Stupid platitude. People don't know. Well, let's listen to that again.
People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Another question for the chat. Does that sound like something a successful football coach says? That sounds like something you read out of Chicken Soup for the Stupid Soul. That's what that sounds like. That sounds like something a crypto scammer would say or something. It's not something like, are there any North Carolina fans that listen to this and are worried now? Because I would be, especially since this guy's not going to get on here and do an interview without me telling everybody how full of crap he is.
So me pouring into those guys and just letting them know how much I care about them, the relationships that I've tried to build with each and every one of them over the last 6 months. I think those kind of things matter, and it's a fun group to coach. They got an edge. They've got a chip on their shoulder because obviously they're
going to have a big chip on their shoulder once you force them all to enter the portal with your awful record you're going to deliver them. Here's the thing, and I've never played, Division I college football or anything like that, but I have talked to some. Here's what I can tell you. The number one thing a college football player wants is to win. All this psychological and mental BS, no one really cares about. Okay, yeah, you need to develop, a rapport with your players, and you need to care about them. But they want to win. So if you're the most lovey-dovey, just do anything for these guys, but you don't win, that's the worst thing you can do for them, right? That's the worst thing. They came to win. You play to win football games, not chicken soup for the mentally deficient mind, or whatever book he's quoting.
Read social media too, and they want to change the narrative about how defense is played at the University of North Carolina, and I'm happy to help them.
When you come into it and you've got guys that need pushing, but maybe aren't.
Geoff knows about guys that need pushing. That's for sure. Josh Pittman, who's a member of the channel, says, glad you're checking this out, Rick. It's been out for a minute. Yeah, it's been 3 weeks, probably a little longer. I sent it around the time it came out. Sorry, I apologize, guys. That's why I'm no longer saying what I'm doing, because I don't know what I can commit to. But I started listening to this a little bit, and I said, yeah, let's just do a live show. I want to, unlike these hacks of YouTube creators who turn comments off and don't want to interact with their audience because they know they're going to get comments exposing how little they know and how soft they are. Low and surprise, I like interacting with my audience. I want to hear what you guys have to say. They don't.
Used to being pushed in a certain way. What's that challenge? And I'll go ahead and say most people mention Travis Shaw the most on Inside Carolina and across the board, that this is a guy who's potentially a first-round draft pick if it'll click.
Sure.
When you approach.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's not going to be a first-round draft pick for long now that Geoff is there.
A guy like that or a player like that and sort of changing the mindset and knowing how to push different guys different ways. Right. Just sort of talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think Travis is phenomenal, right? Very talented. I thought he had 15 really good spring practices, but I think it goes back to relationships. Before you can sit there and browbeat a guy and call him out in front of his peers and all those kind of things. And if you don't have a relationship, and there's not trust established that you care about the young man and you want what's best for him, so I'm not one of those. I try to give as much relentless enthusiasm and positive.
I'm just going to call it what it is. That's the gayest thing I've ever heard. Relentless enthusiasm. Again, does this sound anything like a football coach? No. You hear the term tough love. Part of being a leader, which is what a coach is pushing you beyond what you think you're capable of, which is not being nice all the time. It's getting after someone's ass when they're messing up in practice or in a game. It's something Geoff has no clue about, holding people accountable. How do I know he has no clue about that? Because he can't even hold himself accountable. Man got paid $11+ million and feels some kind of way about the whole city of Atlanta now. Doesn't know the first thing about accountability.
Positivity poured into each guy. And then at a time when I do need to make a correction, they understand that it's not from a mean-spirited place. It's from a place I know what to say to make you better. Here are the points that you need to improve on. And hopefully the relationship piece, helps with that, correction and the, guys getting better and improving and all those kind of things. And it's also, we do the unit meetings every single day, and it's just facts that we point out. It's not we have a mean spirit towards anybody.
Yeah, he's never going to have a mean spirit toward anyone. As far as Jahmyr Gibbs, I wish I had a channel when all that was going on. That was before I'd got on YouTube. If I was Jahmyr Gibbs' father, I would have told him to transfer from Tech. It's the best thing he did for his career. If Jahmyr Gibbs doesn't transfer out of Georgia Tech with the clown show that Collins was putting on, he doesn't go in the first round. What was he, 16th overall? Doesn't. He never even came close, as talented as he is. Look at what he's doing in the NFL right now. The most he ever rushed for at Tech was like 700 something yards. And that's because he was in a losing system. You know, I'm sure Jeff's idea of getting onto a kid in practice is like giving him a penis pat and telling him, hey, maybe could you kind of not do that? Make a play. Like, that's the furthest Geoff would ever go.
This is really good. We're going to show it to everybody. This is something that we have to correct. We show it to everybody, but it's out of love and respect and, you know, wanting us to have the best product as a whole, and for those guys to go and live their dream once they leave this place of playing at the next level. These are the things that will help you do that. And we've tried to do that for the last 6 months. And obviously,
Nerd Stop with a $2, appreciate it, says, I'm just happy he had a Tech helmet on draft day. And let me be clear, that had zero to do with Geoff Collins. And that had everything to do with Tashard Choice, who he talked about, you know, on draft day and in his statement, even when he transferred. And T. Branch is right. He was then the center of Alabama's offense. You know, the worst choice that Gibbs probably ever made for his career. And I'm not just saying this because I legitimately hate Collins, but it was trusting Geoff Collins was the worst thing that Gibbs did for his career.
who will continue moving forward.
You mentioned baseball and Scott Forbes.
We didn't let Choice go. He quit because he knew, you know, there's no way he was ever going to counteract the stupidity that Collins was injecting in the program. Thank God Brent stayed around long enough to get the opportunity to take the helm.
In the baseball team, they're player-led, but he knows that how he approaches it is what they see as well. How important is player-led for this defense, for this North Carolina team? A guy like Kamen Rucker.
Yep.
Power Eccles, obviously.
Yep.
But just the leadership aspect and being player-led where you don't have to rely on them. You all want them to trust you as a coach.
Sure.
But they trust their buddies too, and
Right.
You got Rucker pulling them forward.
And it's such a great group. There's I don't know the exact number, but I think it's close to 10 that are playing their last year of college football.
I legitimately feel sorry for them too. And I felt this way at Tech for all the seniors that ended their career with 3 and 9 seasons under this dummy. You know, I legitimately, as much disdain as I have for North Carolina, I legitimately feel bad for the seniors that are probably very talented on this defense, that if they do get drafted, have their draft stock greatly reduced because of what this guy's doing. And it's not even something I'm projecting. The whole way they handled their spring game is embarrassing. And it tells you that Mack Brown isn't able to moderate the stupidity that Geoff Collins is wanting to go through with. You know, you have Mack Brown doing play calling at the spring game. He doesn't know his mic's still hot and he's saying, hey, could we maybe be a little more physical? He's buying everything Geoff Collins is telling him, hook, line, and sinker. And it ain't going to end well. It's not.
You have that across a group of guys that, Kamen Rutgers played 2,500 snaps in the Carolina Blue. Power Eccles, I think, has played 2,200 or 2,300. That's a lot of ball. And they work so hard. They're respected. They're trusted. And, we'll put it on them to get them going. And we've got a cool little tradition before every scrimmage, and we'll do it once we start playing too, is the last thing that we do in our last walk through our last meeting is everybody daps up everybody in the room.
Second gayest thing I've ever heard. Dap up everyone in the room. He mentioned this in another press conference. He has like required dapping sessions. Now, I'm not a complete Zoomer moron, so I'm not even really clear as to what that is, but it's not something, if I was a defensive coordinator, I would be concerning myself with requiring. What I would do, probably, opposed to what, Geoff wants to do, is I'd be like, hey, a friend of mine actually mentioned this. You have a blown coverage, leads to a touchdown. You see that 400-pound tire over there we got on the sideline? You're going to be flipping that until you absolutely upchuck your lunch. And I'll make you eat spaghetti like it's Band of Brothers and we're running up Currahee up and down 3 miles. All right? You blow a coverage, you give up points because you don't know where to be. You'll wish you were dead by the time we're done absolutely PTing you in practice. That's how you do. That's what you want out of a football coach. That's accountability. What does Collins say? We need to require dapping or dabbing or whatever the hell he's talking about.
And the first time we did it, I think it lasted 30 seconds. We did it last Thursday before the coaches did.
So he times the dapping sessions. That is now the gayest thing I've ever heard. Okay, that's overtaken the other two. Guys, I timed our dapping session today, and it lasted 30 seconds. Maybe we can last longer next practice.
Hit the road on vacation. That dap up, hug up session might have lasted 5 minutes. So just the connection, believing in each other, respecting each other, those kind of things are immeasurable. And, we've got a great group of guys that, is doing that right now.
We have the number one thing we look at in our football team is how intense we dap and for how long we dap. Wow. How to say I'm a loser without saying I'm a loser. We time our dapping sessions while I'm DC at North Carolina.
Coach Mack Brown has used the blue team and the white team in terms of separating guys who are ready to play and maybe those who are not.
Yep.
You talked about playing a lot of guys. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were in Georgia Tech, you talked about guys who were above the line.
Yep.
Yep, and that was completely stupid. Yeah, if you're not a tech guy, he didn't give a depth chart because I guess he figured, that was, something that could be used against him while scheming. So you just had above the line, which means that you could play, or you were not above the line, which is like the first thing we did away with when the stink of him left.
Being able to play. How do you balance having, maybe 20 guys who are able to play?
Look how quiet he got when he hears Georgia Tech mentioned. And I think that's partly because he knows WreckTalk's out here on the internet. He knows WreckTalk has called him out to a cage fighting match, and the next thing that happened after I called him out to a display of physicality, something that idiot doesn't know anything about, scurried off into his hole and hid and blocked Wreck on Twitter because he don't want this smoke. He don't want this smoke. Just hearing above the line, what do I think about above the line?
To say, in all honesty, it's the biggest piece of dog shit.
That's what it is. It's just a bunch of pageantry and moronic, planning that Geoff Collins likes to attach himself to.
When you get into maybe late game situations, or it could be goal line situations, how do you kind of say, okay, well, we've got this group ready to play, but then we also need to prepare for these special situations?
Yep.
So the question, to state it not completely moronically, is do you have backup players and how do you manage them? Or do you just start the same 11 guys the entire game? So we're back to coaching 101 now.
Yep. So interestingly, this morning, me and our GA Parks Cochran, who is a Carolina Tar Heel player, now is a graduate assistant, we watched the Mississippi State 2014 game versus Texas A&M. I think it was a 3 versus 5 matchup. And then we watched the Auburn versus Mississippi State game.
How about, was it the 2014 Georgia Tech team in the Orange Bowl that year that absolutely boat raced a defense that you had prepared all season? Now, he had taken another job, and he wasn't actually the DC for that game. But again, he talks about defense starts with defending the triple option, dive quarterback pitch. And then a defense that he had coached all year didn't have the first clue how to stop it.
2 versus 3, a week later, maybe something like that. We were rotating a full second team in throughout the game. Like every third series, we would roll the whole second team in, and we played great red zone defense. It was situational once we got into the second half, but early in the game, we were rolling guys in so they would be fresh at the end of the game. They'd be fresh at the end of the season. The Auburn.
Now, I will say at Georgia Tech, you didn't have to worry about playing red zone defense because usually an offense against a Geoff Collins coach defense didn't have to get in the red zone to score. They could score from anywhere on the field, whether it was red zone or not.
It wasn't so much wholesale, but it was still, there was 24 to 25 guys that played on defense for what eventually ended up being, number one team in the country for a while in 2014. So just that.
The same team that got boat raced by Paul Johnson, by the way. Yeah. And again, loser's mentality. He's just okay with being ranked number one at some point in the season. Any coach that's worth hiring, all they care about is where they are after the last game of the season. That's what matters. For Collins, it's just, can we get a whiff of maybe some nice ranking? Gary Glenross says, these guys will be just like Bryce Kuhn was with Collins, choking on Collins, I'll say it, balls, or something else I'm not going to say, until he got fired, then act like they knew it all along. I wasn't watching at that time, so I can't speak to what Bryce did. But if he was nice to Geoff at some point, then that'll be something we have to discuss one day between Bryce and I.
Philosophy, I'm so glad that I shared that commonality with Coach Brown. And when he started talking about the blue team and the white team, I'm like, that's what I've always done. So I get it. I love it. I'll just change how I've called it. Now it's the blue team and the white team. And we use that one in the defensive unit meetings. The young guys are trying to establish them.
Yeah. Mack hired him, and he's like, you do the same dumb stuff I do? Yeah, I'm all for that. Let's do that, blue and white. Yeah, it hasn't worked at North Carolina thus far, so let's just do that.
Themselves as solid white team players and eventually, move their way up so that they can just be able to contribute meaningful snaps in games.
And then the last one I had.
Again, that was all a conversation about rotating players in. That's all that was. Something that every offense and defense does at every level, high school included.
Have for you. Just wanted to ask about tackling in practice. This has been a interesting conversation over the years.
His strong suit at Georgia Tech, which was tackling, right? Oh, yeah, that's right. It was his worst part. Only thing he was worse at than maybe tackling while he was at Tech or coaching it was special teams.
Coaches have different opinions. What is your opinion on the importance of tackling in practice, and if it's necessary to build the physicality that you want?
What a stupid question. What do you think he's going to say? Yeah, we just don't care about tackling. Tackling's an afterthought. Of course, if you're a defensive coordinator, tackling in practice should be something you're concerned with. Now, not with Collins. That's why he whooped the pool noodles out, right? We don't want to get too banged up in practice, so we'll whap each other with pool noodles on the ass and then hope against hope that we'll be able to make tackle in a game. Appreciate the $2 from Nerdstop. Says he said a lot and at the same time nothing. Well, that's what he's great at. I mean, that's what he's great at. This whole interview can be boiled down to, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's like the South part where Mr. I can't remember his name. Mr. Garrison was like running for president, but it was just as a huge joke. And then he's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Please don't vote for me. That's what this interview is.
Well, I think you guys have seen the tackling circuits that we do. We've got a really comprehensive tackling circuit. I've actually there were two. I don't know what you call them. Two dummies or two what?
Two dummies? You mean two Geoff Collins cutouts?
Whatever those things are that we didn't have in the program. Tackling sleds, and there's a new tackling dummy that I've used before. Anyway, that we've ordered that we'll be able to use in the preseason and throughout the season as well. So we simulate every single type of tackle. Did
you catch that? When they talk about tackling being important, the only way you get better at tackling is tackling a guy with the football. There's no way around that. There's no short circuit for that. Okay? So what I'm hearing here is that they tackle dummies at practice that aren't moving. And then Collins goes, "Oh, good job. You really tackled that dummy that poses no threat of moving." They're going to be awful on defense. It's the first thing that Brent Key changed when he was at Tech was, according to Key, they were doing like 2 light practices a week that weren't contact. Sounds like he's doing the same thing at North Carolina. And for any North Carolina fans like, well, I mean, you're horrible at defense. Who would listen to you? Right. That's how I know what, a horrible defense looks like and prepping what a horrible defense will be this season.
That you can every single week. Then we do a great job of teaching thud, profile tackles, side tackles, all those kind of things to keep everybody safe. But we've already talked about Coach Brown has brought this up probably more than anybody. And we'll use the allotted amount of times during practice to go live. Understand that the health and safety of the guys is paramount. But I think the drill work that we do, our focus on getting to a profile.
So if Mack Brown is such a guru in preparing teams that can tackle, why does Virginia beat you at home last year? Why does Georgia Tech beat you in Key's interim year with a 3rd and 4th string quarterback? Why is Georgia Tech about to win their 4th game in a row against you? If Mack Brown is this idiot savant of tackling.
Tackle, even when we're in thud, not going to the ground, and the physicality and also understanding taking care of your buddy.
Right. So I called that. Yeah, he's just doing pity pat practice here at North Carolina.
I think those things are very important.
We're wrapping up with Coach Geoff Collins. Coach, I feel like you probably talk ball in your sleep.
He talks ball to his daughter before she goes to sleep.
So I'm going to ask you a fun one before we get out of here. What does Geoff Collins do when he's not talking or thinking about football?
Hang out with my wife and daughter, man. I've been 6 months up here without them, and I'll try not to get emotional, but I will go on the next 3 weeks of vacation and spend a ton of time with them. And then they're actually moving up here end of July, thank goodness. And we'll be back together again. So I'm spending time with my family, riding my Peloton, and I'm a simple dude, man.
I do agree that he's a simple dude. He's definitely the simple Jack of coaching. I have nothing to say as far as his family and daughter and what kind of father he is. I'm sure he's a great father. I'm sure he's a great husband. Well, I can speak to the kind of coach he is, and it's awful. What did he say? A pelican? I don't even know what that is.
Who's your Peloton trainer?
Okay, so great question.
Peloton. What is a Peloton?
Dennis Morton's probably the one I go to the most. I like Alex Toussaint when I want to set a PR, put on a really good ride, and I need some bangers going, to good music. Ben Aldis when I'm taking long rides. I don't know if that's too detailed of a answer, but
It's not too detailed. Just no one gives a crap about what you're talking about.
those are probably my top 3.
No, I think it's awesome. I've got a buddy of mine with a Peloton. He's all about some
What the hell is a Peloton? Hold on a second. What is a Peloton? Peloton, I'll just spell it like it sounds. It's a workout machine. Okay. That's what it is, guys. That's a Peloton. So he's talking about what he likes to do in his spare time. He's talking about, some lame workout bike. Sweet.
Kindle tool, whatever the name is.
Is this sponsored by Peloton or something? Is that why we had to talk about Peloton bikes?
He says she gets him going. So,
oh yeah, is the Peloton? Is that what he brought on to the sidelines when we worked out on the sidelines before we played Clemson? Before they beat us 75-7 or whatever.
It's been a fun conversation. I do appreciate it. Carolina, Minnesota, what, 60-some days away? Can you believe it?
It's getting here. It's getting here. We call it the lab, our defensive staff meeting room. There's Minnesota stuff everywhere. So we know the challenge we've got ahead of us, and we're going to spend the time getting ready.
That is North Carolina Defensive Coordinator Geoff Collins. That's Greg Barnes. We've been sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. Coach, appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
All right. Well, that was get this off my screen. Hold on a second. That was 40 minutes I'll never get back. Where's my little camera? That was 40 minutes I'll never get back. We are all definitely dumber for having listened to that. And, we didn't learn anything that we didn't already know.